All right, this week on Bookworm, Dr. Beth drops by to talk Night Circus, and we give each other recommendations for books that don't suck. Stay tuned. Diddly-loo, diddly-loo, diddly-loo. Welcome back to Bookworm. I'm Casey. Today we're going to be talking about an Erin Morgenstein novel with Miss Dr. Beth. But first of all, Dr. Beth, introduce yourself to the internet. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
I am Beth Heron, and I am a doctor of psychology.
Dun, dun, dun.
And what is a doctor of psychology doing talking about books? Actually, we read a lot of them, which is not nearly so interesting as the ones we're going to be talking about today. I also write a blog, and I am a big fan of thatstupidpodcast.com.
Excellent. Promotion. So, I'm actually really interested to get your take on the book we're going to be reading as a psychologist. I'd like to see what you pick up in the book. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstein. And we both read this book not long ago, and we both really enjoyed it, but we kind of had different opinions on some of the things in the book. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
I came prepared.
Yes, she is dressed for the book today. So. First off, what are your immediate reactions to the book? What did you overall think?
Well, it is a phantasmagorical fairy tale, and it has beautiful, beautiful imagery, stuff that draws you in. It really gets within your conscious and subconscious with its images to draw you further into the plot of the story. And for me, the underlying struggle and aspects of getting with the characters and the archetypal struggle that is underlying this game that is played throughout the book was the things that stuck out for me psychologically, and just as a guy who likes to read. So
okay, one of the things I'd like to point out, for those of you who may not have read it yet, it's a book. It's about magic, sort of, but the book centers around this circus. What's the line? The circus appeared without warning. And it follows the lives of these two young people, both of which are being groomed by these sort of mercurial, kind of shadowy instructors for some ultimate battle. Obviously a magical battle, but I think one of the more important things, as you were talking about as a psychologist, is the relationship of these two people, not only to each other, but to their instructors, I think is a really important thing to look at.
I think one of the things when we were talking earlier that you pointed out was that it's touted as a love story. Mm-hmm. And basically it talks about the star-crossed lover aspect of what is going on. And what really comes into play is, again, this archetypal battle. You've got these masterful mentor, instructor, puppet masters that are taking these two young people, molding them into their own personal chess pieces. And the whole game, even down to the black and white, becomes this chess game played with human emotions and magic. And that in itself then lays a stage on which all of the rest of the beautiful imagery comes to play. And brings people in a dreamlike stance. The language, the pensive way that it talks about what happens within the circle and the way that people meet, and even the lack of time flow. There's not really a good...
It goes back and forth between different viewpoints and time.
It really does. If you're looking for something that you can follow with a direct timeline from beginning to end, this is not your book.
This is not your book. You need to be able to kind of keep up with what's going on. You have to pay a little closer attention. But I think one of the more interesting things you pointed out was the imagery in the book. And I think, to me, personally, that was the strongest, most appealing aspect of the book. Was not necessarily the characters or the kind of plot that was going on, but I think what the author really excels at is her descriptions. It's the way that
I would agree with
she
that.
completely draws you in. And as you read further and further, I mean, and she can go on for pages about a clock, but you don't realize you've read an entire chapter about an inanimate object because it is so artfully rendered that you do like it's dreamlike. You feel like you're floating through it and kind of absorbing all these things, and it's beautifully written.
Well, and what did you take away? For example, I think the last cast you actually really talked about your love of Jane Austen and her characters, and of course there's a whole underlying love story in all of her books as well. The love story aspects that I really thought were kind of a sideline. What did you think about those?
I kind of thought they were secondary to the more important aspect of the lives that the circus touched and the circus itself. I thought it was a less important aspect. Now, if you read the back of the book cover, it does kind of tout these star-crossed lovers, and it's kind of deceptive because it is a love story. There is kind of love in there, but it's more of an afterthought. To me, it felt like the author thought she needed this particular draw, and so, okay, well, we're going to make these two people fall in love. And to me, it was less about their love and more about the circus and how their love and their decisions about their love affected the circus and the lives of everyone who worked in the circus. And personally, there's a more interesting love story in it, I thought, between the two young kids, Bailey and Poppet. I thought that was much more fun to read, more engaging, more engrossing than the two main characters. To me, it was more fun to watch Bailey and Poppet interact.
Well, and you saying that, talking about the main characters, I honestly felt like everybody was side characters except for the circus. The circus was the main character. The circus is like kind of its own living being, and the rest of them are just kind of props that come around,
To further the circus along, to help explain why the circus is there. I mean, if you think, what is a protagonist or what is a main character? It's the person or thing that most affects the story, most affects the plot line, carries the plot line from point A to point B. And if you look at all the actual human characters in this book, to me, none of them really live up to that definition. Yeah. It's the circus. It's the concept of the circus, the idea of the circus, the birth of the circus that propels the story. So yeah, the circus is the main character.
Now, so we've talked about protagonists. Let's talk a minute about antagonists. Because basically, I think the only real antagonists that we can really latch onto are our puppet masters.
Ah, yes.
Mr. H and Prospero. And that dynamic, archetypal struggle between good and evil, or just
God
power and power. Mm-hmm. And I think it's I'm not spoiling too much by saying that they come from two schools of thought. One is about thought. One is about manifestation.
The idea of theory versus practical application,
yes.
which is more important, or which is stronger.
Yes. And so it's this battle, this chess match where they have these two pieces that they have brought up. And this has been going on for millennia. They have been doing this
over and over again with different students. To varying results.
Yes, to very, very end results, and typically with one of them not surviving, which brings in our star-crossed lovers again.
One of them is destined to die, and one of them is destined to be the champion in this kind of battle.
So,
although they get out of that one in the end.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
They do. And the thing is that's why I say that even though we've got this epic battle of these two puppet masters, and we can kind of attribute, and there's some characteristics where you can kind of say, okay, this one's good
and this one's
bad. But the truth is they're both fighting their battle using pawns. And that was that, again, the psychologist in me rebels and says, no, you must not play with people.
It's battle by proxy. And
yes.
And it automatically makes you think, well, how much thought are they given to the lives of the people, of the pawns they're using? Obviously, you can't feel that they have that much concern for Celia and Marco as individuals. They're means to an end for our instructors.
Right.
So you automatically kind of don't like them. You kind of think they're dicks.
Yeah, I would concur.
That's a psychological term.
I absolutely.
Dick is a psychological
that is a
term.
clinical term. They are both douchebags.
They suffer from extreme douchebaggery.
Yes, very much of the vinegar and water. So, basically, I feel like from a psychological perspective, it was a thriller for me because there was parts and I could not put it down. And then there was, evenings reading it where I'm like, and now I must turn on all the lights in the house because, I felt it congealing around me.
It does. It's kind of... The book has like this miasma of emotion
Yes.
that settles down, and I think that's because it is so beautifully descriptive and so well written. I mean, the things that the author does poorly, she does poorly, but the things that she does well, like her descriptions, are done really well.
They're magnificent. There's no action though.
There's no action.
I think we both read some of the reviews, and this is the biggest complaint: is
it's boring. A lot of people thought it was boring because it's not action driven. It's not this happened and this happened and explosive and magical wand battles. It's not Harry Potter.
No,
it's much more subtle than that.
And there's nothing of the action hero rushing around saving the girl. There's none of that. Everything's very much, there's highs and there's lows, but there's no real peaks and no denouement. It's just there. But that's kind of like the circus. It comes and then goes,
and it leaves without warning.
And so I heard a rumor that they're going to do a movie.
I've heard the same rumor, and to me, I have a little bit of trepidation with the idea of this book going to the big screen because reading it was like floating through a dream. We've both said that. It's very dreamlike. It's very ethereal and fluid. And to try to capture that, I don't really know how well they're going to be able to pull off that ethereal feeling.
Well, and of course, I have my dread, which is somebody, J.J. Abrams or somebody's going to get a hold of this thing and try to make it into an action flick.
This is Michael
Bay. Because it does say
battles.
explosive battles are on the back cover. They're going to get Michael Bay to come in and like blow something up. And that's not really the flavor of this movie. I could see somebody like Emma Thompson doing the screenplay and doing it justice, like she did with Sense and Sensibility or something like this. But I just...
Because in the entire book for me had a very feminine quality.
Yes, it really does.
I think that word works. It has a very kind of soft, very subtle, even the pull of emotion that comes out of it isn't an overwhelming, you're not going to burst into tears and then burst out laughing. It's much more mellow and subdued.
It doesn't have the highs and lows. And it, again, going back to that whole dream thing, it doesn't have the highs and lows that you have in real life. Mm-hmm. There's not the cascades and epic climaxes and then falling to pieces, and it doesn't hit you that way. It kind of, as in a dream, you don't really feel it all. You're just kind of removed, and it's all kind of
and
vague
that's not
and
to say
amorphous.
that the book lacks drama.
No, it does.
Because there are incredibly dramatic aspects to it.
Yes,
but it's more. I overuse the word subtle, but I can't stress it enough with this book. It is a subtle drama. It's a well rendered drama that's not an in-your-face bash you over the head with the emotion. It lets you experience it for yourself. And I think to me, reading a book, I like to be able, I don't want to be bashed over the head with it. Don't give it all away. Don't flash the boobies at Mardi Gras. Give me a little mystery to it.
See, and I like a good action thriller, pot boiler. I like those. But this was very different and caught a hold of my imagination, and I think I felt it differently than you did. Mm-hmm. You got caught up very much in the circus itself. I got caught up in this underlying battle and the psychological thriller aspects of I don't know exactly what's going on, and this mystery and people kind of finding their way into it.
And I think that's telling that we came at it from two very different aspects. You from the psychological, obviously, from your background, and me kind of a dreamer, I would think, to a certain extent. So I kind of went at it as the idea of the circus itself. What would it be like to be in this all red, all
black
white and black with
the ravers,
who follow the circus from port to port. Back in the day they were groupies.
Yes,
they're circus groupies,
and now they are the ravers, the dreamers, and the circus. The circus is dreamed awake. And that's the whole.
It comes into being from these two people adding continually adding to the circus and drawing new things out of it, and that's their battle. It's not an epic, explosive, two people dueling it out until the end. It's
very much more cerebral. It's
it exists more in your head.
And both of us have described it in such a way that it seems kind of milquetoast in some ways for a lot of people, but this thing really does grab a hold of you.
It does.
You get in there for the ride. I read this thing in 2 days, and that
Same
was
here. I
working
devoured
and
it.
Everything. I literally could not put it down.
I'm taking a smoke break at work. I'm getting a couple of pages in.
Yeah, it was absolutely one of those that I could not let go.
You couldn't put it down until you finished it. And like I said, we both really enjoyed it. I think
absolutely.
We each kind of had some things we didn't like about it or didn't necessarily get about it. But at the end of the day, it was a great book. But it's not going to be for everyone.
It was a good read. It's a wonderful read for someone who wants to actually think. It's not bubblegum for the mind by any means.
Nothing wrong with bubblegum for the mind, but this is not one of those books.
Everybody needs some bubblegum for the mind.
Nora Roberts,
bubblegum for the mind. So, but I really did enjoy it. So definitely, I would recommend reading The Night Circus.
I would recommend it again to the person who's not necessarily looking for an action-packed whirlwind. We can speak today. Whirlwind. Carry you from point A to point B really quickly. But if you want something that you kind of seep into and let it seep into you, definitely pick this book up. If you love descriptions, if you love being transported to the place through the author really pulling you in, then definitely pick up The Night Circus. Again, it's by Erin Morgenstern. You can pick it up in any bookstore. All right. Now we have our wonderful co-host here for the week, Miss Dr. Beth, and we're going to talk a little bit about book recommendations. If you're anything like me, you're constantly looking for something new. And one of the best places to get ideas for something new is to talk to your friends, talk to other people who read. So now that I have Miss Mama Beth here, I'm going to use her for a minute. What would you recommend to someone like me to read?
All right, so today I have brought The Historian, and this is by Elizabeth Kostova. And I happen to know that Casey likes vampire books.
I don't hide it all that well.
No, she really doesn't. She likes her some vampire fiction.
Blood-sucking fiends.
This book is actually interesting to me because it is written, the author has taken it from the aspect of Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker's Dracula was written as a series of letters and journal entries and documentation throughout, police reports and harbor master reports and all of that.
Mina's diary.
And Mina's diary and letters back and forth, correspondence and the records of the doctor. So with all of that in mind, Miss Kostova has done the same thing with The Historian.
Okay.
And The Historian actually is a series of the lead-in begins with a father-daughter relationship. And the daughter, who is the daughter of a diplomat, she finds out that her father had this past before she was born. Imagine that. Imagine your parents having lives before you were born.
What crazy speak is this?
I know. Crazy talk.
Their life started with our conception.
Exactly. I mean, nobody has any lives before our children. So she basically takes this and writes then journals and letters, and it's the girl reading. Now, there's a little bit more action and descriptive narrative in between that she takes to get from place to place and some interaction with some of the characters, but it's the girl traveling around, visiting the places that her father went.
So basically following
in his footsteps.
These clues in the journal entries?
And it's clues that are in the journal entries, in the letters that she finds and she reads. And she is following on her father's journey where he was seeking and trying to solve a mystery.
A vampire mystery?
A vampire mystery. Mm-hmm. He was trying to solve a mystery himself, and it follows his adventures, and she's following his footsteps, and it all comes together in the end for them to have kind of an epic battle. Little spoiler alert here is that basically the historian is a character
Okay, so not just a title, it's an actual being in the story.
It's a being in the story.
That's our vampire, isn't it? I can tell already.
The true thirst of the vampire is not for blood or for eternal life. It's for knowledge, and that's why he lives so long.
Interesting. It kind of throws the normal vampire myth on its head.
Well, and it does. And of course, he does do the things that he does.
He does do vampire stuff.
Yes, he does do vampire stuff.
He doesn't sparkle in the sun.
There's the bitey bits, and there's the...
I love the bitey bits.
The bitey bits are, you always have to have that. There are grand organizations and brotherhoods of protectors that basically come in. So you have all of the old stuff going on, the old, real, tried and true vampire mythos going on. But then you have this whole other aspect, and it's this library that he collects, and he always is looking for a historian to help him.
Okay.
He's the historian. So he is absolutely, it's a marvelous book. The things that I truly enjoyed about it, it does get a little ponderous at times. I think that she tried a little too hard to stick to the Bram Stoker.
You can't recreate the wheel in a lot of...
Well, and I have to admit, please, send hate mail. It's drmama@thatstupidpodcast.com. Feel free to do so. I had a problem with Bram Stoker because his got a little ponderous.
Be gone from me, woman. Be gone,
yes,
I say.
I know, but some of his actually kind of got a little wordy. But I always blame it on
classic.
Well, I blame it on his Victorian.
Yeah, well, Victorians, they always have their own little
they've got their thing
going on. But
we'll have another talk sometime about Dickens. We'll have another talk sometime.
We are not doing Dickens.
We may have another talk about Bram Stoker one of these days. So
I will win.
But so it does get a little bogged down because I think she tried too hard to replicate that same feel with the journal entries, with the letters, with the trying too hard.
I mean, there's a fine line between paying homage to something and ripping it off completely.
Precisely.
But you think she treads that line pretty well?
It does pretty well. Like I said, it slows down, it bogs down a bit. Sometimes it can get kind of weighty. The parts that are truly that I loved, and this may appeal to you, is that a lot of the countryside that they go through is Hungary and the Eastern Bloc. Going into Transylvania, Bulgaria, and they go and they visit the descriptives of that. I mean, they really paint the picture of the countryside. It becomes its own character, and it's very vivid. It's wonderful. They also, she set this because she's reading her father's old journals. Mm-hmm. He's reading his mentor's journals.
So journal upon journal
upon layer upon
carry
another
a journal.
one.
That's what
yes. So basically, getting all down in there, you go through some very, very turbulent times in Eastern Europe because the old gypsy heritage his mentor had run into, the advent of communism taking over, the Cold War era,
which is all so interesting and can be entire books and novels unto itself. I mean, there's such a rich history.
She really does thread that in there very, very beautifully, and she uses all of that intrigue to add to the tension of what is going on with the characters themselves, aside from the fact that they're hunting a vampire.
I mean, let's get back to the meat of it. It's vampires. That's all I need to know. Tell me vampire book and it's in my queue.
But I'm still keeping one secret out. I'm not spoiling it all because there's part of it that I think you're going to absolutely be thrilled with.
Yay. Okay, well, I'm definitely... Okay, so Historian by Elizabeth
Kostova.
Kostova. A little Eastern European there.
Yes, a little bit.
Okay, so that's going to be on my next to-read list. I'm also still waiting to read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, recommended to me by our own Rev, Mr. Steven. He's on my case to read that one, but I may have to bump that aside and go with the Historian. Sorry, Steven. Shit happens. Damn vampire books gets me every time. Okay, now we've had your recommendation for me, and a very apt one it was. Now I'm going to give one to you. book I think you should read. Now, if you remember our last broadcast, I talked about a Pride and Prejudice sequel that was gut-wrenchingly awful. Really horribly, horribly done. And the book I want to recommend this week to you is a Pride and Prejudice tie-in, but it goes to show you that you can do this well. You can have a sequel or a tie-in to something that's already famous in its own right, and it can be done well. So I'm going to recommend to you a book called Longbourn. And it is by Joe Baker. Now, it's not necessarily a sequel, but it's a tie-in novel, and it follows the lives of the servants of the Bennet household.
Oh.
Think a little Downton Abbey. There's a whole world going on underneath the stairs that we don't get to see.
The backstairs folks.
The backstairs folks, the scullery maids and the housekeepers.
The upstairs folks, as it was back in the day. That's where the servants' quarters usually were.
So this book follows very closely the lives of one of the servant girls named Sarah. And you get little glimpses through her eyes of what she thinks of the Bennets. Now, having read the original Pride and Prejudice, you have this very idealized version of the beautiful Bennet daughters, and we fall in love with them, and they're so sophisticated and well-mannered and beautiful. And then you see them through the eyes of the person who has to wash their underwear. And it's a really interesting look at how perspective is everything. Mm-hmm. So you have this young girl, Sarah, and she even says in the book, I think Elizabeth Bennet would be a little more careful with her skirts if she was the one who had to wash them. So you get
the 3 inches in mud comes to play to somebody else. It's a little different to them.
It sounds really great that Lizzie doesn't care. 3 inches in mud, she's irreverent and
until poor Sarah has to wash it.
Until poor Sarah has to scrub them clean.
I see.
And you get kind of a different version of history in the Bennet household told through Sarah. Kind of spoiler alert, but Mr. Bennet has not always been the upright husband we think he is.
Ah.
He strays a little. He's a little bit of a cad. And that creates its own whole host of problems within the family. But I think the most interesting thing about the book is how this author, as opposed to the book we reviewed last time, is able to work with the source material and work within the world that Austen created that really makes it feel genuine and makes it feel plausible. And you don't feel like you're being cheated, or you don't feel like you're being bait and swapped. You don't think you're getting a Pride and Prejudice novel when you're really not. She actually does follow through with the idea of Austen's feminism. Because you take someone like Lizzie Bennet, who, as you said, fights the constraints of her time, the role she's expected to fill as a woman in those eras. And then you have Sarah, who is even a step lower down the rung as far as social standing and rights, being a servant woman. She doesn't have all the benefits that Lizzie might have, but she still
some freedom.
She still dreams of something more.
Well, and she also, I think, being a servant in that era also gave you a little bit more freedom because what is it that Austen said in Sense and Sensibility? You inherited your fortune. We're not even allowed to earn ours.
Exactly.
And so Sarah actually has it sounds like she's got some independence.
She does. She has a lot of independence.
A little spirit.
A little spirit. And like Lizzie, she's not content with her lot in life. But unlike Lizzie, she doesn't necessarily have the means of upward movement. At least, gentle women could marry well. Mm-hmm. Sarah doesn't have that option. Mm-hmm. She's a maid, she's going to be a servant, but the fact that she aspires to more and the fact that she pushes against what's expected of her and realizes that she's an intelligent woman and she is deserving of someone equally intelligent and of her own choosing, I think makes her kind of a Lizzie Bennet type character, but still wholly herself and still a unique voice. And I love the little glimpses you get of the Bennet sisters. Not only the Bennet sisters, but Mrs. Bennet. I loved Mrs. Bennet. She's a very overly dramatic, kind of kooky woman, and watching the staff deal with her and what they say about her below stairs in the kitchen, you'll laugh out loud at a lot of it. It is pretty funny.
Well, yeah, because we have the housekeeper who is the one person that they could trust. And I love the fact that your author has actually chosen a name that was in the book.
Yeah.
Sarah, never mind Miss Lizzie's hair.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like the fact that they actually have that tie-in.
And all the characters that we loved from the original book make an appearance to some level. To some extent, they are all in there. You get Mr. Darcy, you get Mr. Bingley, but you also have a whole host of new characters that the first time around we would never have known anything about. And they are all just as interesting as these main characters we already love. So it's a great way to expand your sort of Pride and Prejudice world that is well written and very highly entertaining.
Well, I am definitely going to have to pick that one up and definitely peruse that one, because I love Pride and Prejudice as much as you do.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
And unlike you, though, I will probably pick it up on my Kindle.
No.
It will happen.
We will have the Kindle versus paper book debate at some point. I am old school. I like the smell of books. Those newfangled writing machines, I don't have nothing to do with them.
I like the smell of books. I'm older.
You like the cold electronic smell of the decay of society.
I am older than you, and I prefer not to have the scholar's hump from carrying all my books.
Yeah, I could kill someone with my purse. There's usually 3 or 4 books in there at any given time. I could hit someone with that, and death by literature, that's all I'm saying.
Good to know. Good to know.
I beat up a hobo with Pride and Prejudice. No,
yay.
Okay. So any closing comments for the internet world out there? Anything you want to let them know?
That basically when we stop reading, we stop expanding our mind and our imagination, and that books, movies are great, the internet is great, television is great, but books make you use your imagination to fill in the gaps that are not there when you look at a different type of media. Keep reading, folks, because you let those little parts of your mind die, you may not get them back. Reading will keep you smart for longer.
All right, you guys heard it here. That's Dr. Beth's recommendation to you. Turn off the fucking computer and go pick up a book. Doctor's orders. Best of these books.
Read a book, read a book, read a book.
Let's go read a book. And we're still rolling.
Oh, no!
Pina colada.
Like, I got a book for you. No, but not that.
Say hello to my little book.
Say hello to my little book.
That's cute. See?
No.
Yes.
God.
That's awesome.
Oh boy.
That's awesome. It
Seriously.
doesn't have to be that, but I mean that's cute. That's the kind of stuff.
Okay.